Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to Thursday PD. We are so excited to be joining you guys today. Today is our last episode of 2021. How do you guys feel about that?
I think we're just talking about the academic year, right?
Yes, just the academic year, not to scare our viewers. Yes. So welcome in the chat to everybody who's joining. Let us know who you are, where you're joining from, and what you are excited about celebrating at the end of the academic school year. So that's right. It's just the last episode for 2021, but we will be back the first Thursday of every month in September again. So welcome to today's episode. Before we get to celebrations and celebrating all of you as well, we are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into coding. I'm really excited. I've been on a journey for learning how to program for about 4 years, I think, but it's a fairly slow process for myself since I don't have a background in computer information or, technology is all self-taught. So I'm here with all the experts surrounding me, and I'm really excited to learn from all of them today. So today's episode is basically a kickstart into where does somebody who's really curious about programming start. And I know that there are just so many opportunities to include that in the curriculum across K-12. So that's what we're going to dive into today. But first, let's introduce all of our experts. So we'll start with Gary. Let us know where you're joining from, Gary, and an exciting celebration for the end of the year.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gary Garcia from the Philippines. I don't consider myself an expert because I just learn coding on my own. I don't have a formal lesson about coding. That is why I'm so interested with our topic for tonight.
Welcome, Gary. We're so excited. I mean, you've been here for years, so I shouldn't even be saying welcome. You're like one of the grandfathers of this show, so congratulations. James, how you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm celebrating because I finished writing my reports this afternoon.
Nice.
Which is the key thing. And I hear Seti finished them yesterday, so that's really cool. Yeah.
It is a massive win. Yeah, it takes a long time to personalize each one, celebrate all the epic wins of our learners in the classroom as well. Welcome to, wrong way.
Welcome, Wes. Woohoo! Wes, meet Georgina and
Look
Eric.
who's back.
Yes,
What's going on, everybody?
Welcome
I'm
back.
so happy to be here. Thursday.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Georgina, Eric, I don't know if you know Wes.
Nope.
Wes is
Howdy.
No. New friends.
Wes is one of the pioneer of
Wes
Thursday
is one of the
dance.
OGs.
No way.
He's one of the
Yes.
original
Yes.
Thursday PD crew.
Okay, nice.
Oh, what an epic surprise.
Yes.
Well, nice to meet you, Wes.
That's right.
Nice to meet you.
How
too.
many
When
years ago was that when you started this, Wes? That must have
we
been...
start like me and Davis were
I
having a
gave you a
conversation
clue.
at some.
Around 7,
was-
yeah.
It was definitely a long time ago. Still going.
Yeah.
We needed
Yeah,
to figure out a
so-
way to have like events for Google Educator groups,
That's
and we
right,
were like,
yeah.
oh, we could just do like a Thursday, the online event, and then it just went on from there. But it wasn't always called Thursday PD, right? What was it called?
Thursday. But we discovered there's a lot of different
Different
names and things
Yeah.
going on under that name.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah,
been a
of course,
Thursday,
of
though.
course.
So that's good. It's always been a Thursday.
Yes.
Thursday stuck.
At the same time.
Main thing. So we
Everyone's
That's
usually
awesome.
available on a Thursday. Yeah.
So, Wes, where are you located since it's the first time to meet you? This is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm in Tokyo, Japan right now. Yeah. I'm
So
working at
cool.
I'm working at the American School in Japan as a learning data assessment specialist. But I got some news, guys. Actually, this is the last week or two that I'll be working at the American School in Japan. Do you guys know where I'm moving next?
I may have
I just met you,
an
so I
idea.
definitely don't.
Yeah.
out of the
I've got,
still in Japan.
Wes, I've got a feeling we're going to be neighbors. Is that...
Going back to where it started, I'm moving back to
Wow.
Thailand. I'll be in Bangkok next year. I'm super pumped about it.
Great.
Awesome.
So you guys are all going to be close together. We have to hopefully after COVID arrange like a meetup so we can meet in person. That'd be super cool.
1000% sure.
Looking
Super
forward to
excited
it.
about
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
5 years,
welcome to
5 years in
West.
Tokyo, but yeah. Yep.
Now, and I was going to ask a different question, but I've changed my mind. So welcome to Wes, who needs no introduction since he is a founder of this epic show. I'm definitely probably the newest one here. So, but I'm also probably the newest to coding. So that's why I'm hosting today. Sethi, welcome. This popular guy needs no introductions, but please share something you're celebrating also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm celebrating the same thing James is celebrating. Those reports are done, and I am so happy. So bring on the holiday. I mean, we're still going till the 18th, but at least all the reports are written. So that's the biggest job, really. So that's definitely worthy of a celebration.
Absolutely. It's a big milestone accomplished.
Now, I mean, hearing Wes is coming back to Bangkok, that is...
Great.
That's awesome. I'll be in a better time zone, I'll definitely be able to make these because it's 10 o'clock here now, so it's a little late for the Thursday PD section.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to.
I wanted to move it earlier, but this was about the earliest of time.
Eric, if you want to fix that time zone issue, you've got to move here.
It could happen. You never can tell.
He likes it late, though. He's a night hawk. He wanted earlier.
Yeah, no, I do better than I used to. Yeah, I'm up too late sometimes, but I do better. Yeah.
Okay, so guys, we need to welcome our viewers in the chat. We got so excited about Wes. Wes, you have some new fans, some new people to meet in the chat. So we're going to say good morning to Shannon, who's joining at 6 a.m. from America. Wes, we have fans from America. So make sure you connect with her. And we also have Adam joining in the chat. Just trying to scroll up to see where Adam's joining from. Does anybody know where Adam's from? Southeast Asia,
Malaysia.
he says.
Kuala
Malaysia
Lumpur,
also?
Pacific.
Oh,
Yeah,
lovely, lovely, lovely. Awesome. Great. Well, tweet it out, guys. Invite everybody else. We are going to chat some introduction to coding. But before we start, we have to introduce Eric. Eric is like the shining star of the show. Eric?
Yeah, right.
What are you celebrating today?
Well, I'm kind of celebrating that as my first year not teaching, I'm not having to do reports. But yeah, I'm doing report cards. So my deadline's a little bit later. And I've I said something really smart. Like I can totally redo that report card system. That was really smart. And so, so I have a big deadline after all the grading's done. But anyway, yeah, I'm pretty happy about that too. So that's cool.
That is a lesson in smugness.
Right?
You don't have the reports. You did not keep quiet, and now you have all of the reports for the entire school to be redesigned.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. They're lucky to have you though, Eric. See, I mean, like how many people could be like, yeah, let me just redo the entire reporting system, right?
Yeah. That's what I get.
Anybody but me can do it. Anybody but me. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
Because he was missing all that marking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just something that needed a gap to fill there. Yeah.
No, but shout out to you, Eric. It's an interesting year, obviously, for all the educators and leaders that are joining in the chat, and for all of us, right? We're all going through something absolutely brand new this year. But as you said, Eric, you've just transitioned into a new role, and that's going to also be really important for today's conversation, thinking about where we can take our new language learning for next year.
Yeah.
So while we're diving in, please let us know in the chat what you guys are celebrating this year, and also if you have any experience in coding. And with that, we're going to have our first question. So for educators and leaders who are watching this and joining in the chat or asynchronously on demand, what would you say is a good definition of coding for somebody who's absolutely brand new, never heard of it, doesn't have a clue about it, but are interested in starting to explore it because they know now that students are going to need these skills finishing up the school year? What could we do to define coding in education for them?
If it was me, I think it is, keep it very simple. It is solving problems. That is what it's about, solving problems as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, I agree.
You know, I could build on that too. I think it's about problem solving, but it's like I always think about. I'll probably say this if we keep talking about the to the talk, but it's creative problem solving. You know, like you got this problem, you got to think creatively on maybe there's not like one way to solve this situation or create this code. We're gonna figure out, learn something, and creatively figure out a new way to do it.
But it's also using a specific sort of tool, like I don't know. I got a lot into Google Sheets and formulas and combinations of formulas that build on each other and building systems this year. And I mean, it feels pretty much indistinguishable from the coding that I used to do as a programmer at a university, and just a different language, a different set of tools. But it's like those are the kind of tools that you use, formulas, commands, something that you can run and that ideally can then, run without you. Yeah.
I mean, I would
think
add
I heard a little bit.
I was just going to add to Eric and say that every formula in Sheets or Excel is a one line of code effectively, because each formula is a line of code. And particularly in Sheets, you can even include things like SQL, which is code. I mean,
true. Yep.
So, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I was going to say, I'll wait a little longer next time, guys. Sorry. I was going to say to Eric that I think I heard a little bit of automation in there. So we're going to get into that in a second. But you guys mentioned a few things like creativity and problem solving, right? These are all part of those 4, 6, and possibly becoming 7 C's that everybody's talking about for the future. What do you guys see as coding being, and we'll talk a little bit more about more tools and programs, etc. But what do you guys see is the relevance? Why is that important? Why do we need a buy-in for that for every learner in the school? Because I think previously everybody considered coding, computing, like ICT, the old terminology, as really a separate thing to education. Why is it important that there's such a big relevance for our students nowadays especially?
Well, I would say it's 21st century mathematics, and also it is now so much a part of your lives. When I tell students, how long does it take before you use a computer chip? Most kids can barely get out of bed because the first thing they do is their alarm clock is a phone or their aircon. They will not even leave the room without using it. And they had to get quite contrived to even get themselves out of the house without encountering a computer. And so computers are everywhere. The internet is everywhere. And the expectation that you're able to do data research and data programming is expected across all science degrees. It's not just a computer science degree. You want to do any type of degree, any kind of data analysis, you need to be able to do that basic programming.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I think we're living in a time now where we have all these amazing tools everywhere, and so few people know how they really work. And I find that surprising in a sense that we're all using things that we don't know how they work. And so many people, when you mention that to them, they, oh yeah, actually, so how does that work? And then you spark that interest. And then once that interest is there, it opens up an entire new world of possibilities. And it's just, it's one of those things where if you can show someone how it impacts their life in a meaningful way, and I think that ties in with what James said earlier about as effectively as possible. When you show them sort of, oh yeah, so you've been spending 2 hours on this problem, well, here is a little line that'll do it in 2 minutes for you. And once you've shown them that, they realize that this is magic. It's magic, and I can use this to change the world. And I think that is what's so amazing about this.
Yes, anybody can do it.
Yes, that's the thing. Yeah. People assume, because there's one thing if it's magic and I don't know how to do it, but especially if you can show them like in a simple way, a simple example, like at a level that people can understand. Basically, I feel like a huge amount of it is just breaking the ice, just making realize that they can do it too. I remember, gosh, I was probably, I don't know, 20 something when my brother, like, I saw him doing something in DOS and I didn't know what he was just starting a game, like I didn't know what he was typing, something on the command line. And I was pretty intimidated, but I just put, like, when that was what was standing between me and a game, then I said, okay, wait, what do I type? And then it started to sink in what things meant.
Mm-hmm.
And so similarly, if you got somebody who's working, like you say, like 2 hours, 3 hours on a problem, and then this achievable step is between them and saving a lot of time, then that's it gives them the motivation to take that first step.
In my case, I'd like to add to what Tim said. It's basically teaching students to be more patient, to be more critical, to be more in order. Because right now they don't think much because everything is given to them. Everything becomes easy for them because of technology. They are consumers of technology, but they have less question like, how do you do that? So coding will give them interest or a spark, wherein if we introduce coding to them, maybe later on they are not just consumer but also a designer, a programmer, maybe, or not. Whether they become a computer expert or not, whether they become a lawyer or a doctor, in any field that they go, they need to learn how to code so they can make decisions better. Because in coding, you have to weigh things, right? Yeah. Okay. If I do this, what will happen? If I do this, what will happen? Just like in life, you have to decide. So each decision, they have a consequence, or they have some. It will later on it will be something good. So coding is basically for everyone.
And I think with what you say there, making decisions better, I think that is spot on, because what Wes said about, the problem solving, yes, but also thinking about the problem. So it's not just pure problem solving. What is that problem, and what are the smaller problems within the problem that need to be solved? So it's not just, because often we see a problem as one thing. But actually, coding helps you to think about a problem and break it down into smaller steps, and really look at, okay, what parts need changing or solving in order for this problem, the big problem, to get solved. And I think that problem solving with those making better decisions, I think that is something that is really developed within coding. The more you do it, and you don't have to be good at it, can be at any level, but the more you think about the problem, the better you get at that.
Yeah, and I love the way mistakes are a part of the whole thing. They're a part of it. Coders don't make a mistake and they be, oh, dang it, it didn't work, and then walk away. Like, I remember the first time when I started working, I was working as a night guy at a programming shop, and didn't really know mainframe programming yet. And the most educational thing was this guy. He was showing me the ropes, and he wrote a very simple program. And I mean, looking at it, I could tell basically what it was supposed to do. He wrote a very simple program, and then he ran it. And the most educational thing that happened was he was completely surprised that it worked. He was like, whoa. Oh, it worked. It was the first time I didn't make a mistake. It was really simple, but he was so surprised. It was like, oh my God, it's like, it's a pleasant surprise if it does work, not like a disappointment if it doesn't. That was so cool. I mean, you learn so much patience and methodical examination and repetition. The sense of failure is just completely detached. Bugs are part of the process.
And it's beautiful to see that in students as well. It's just so, when you see when you see something and it goes wrong, there's two things that can happen. One is, okay, that's it, done. But then what you do see is those students that have been exposed to coding and sort of that, that process of failure, and it's part of something goes wrong, and they go like, "Ooh, I wonder what happened," and they start looking into it. And I love seeing that when you when it does go wrong, that's just expected. That is okay. Now, okay, so this worked, but that didn't. I wonder why. And it's that mindset that you're trying to get to. You want your students and you as a person, you want to get to that stage where you don't see a failure or something that you don't understand as a stumble block or a wall. You see that as an opportunity. It's almost as if instead of having a wall in front of you that says, no, don't do this, it's a gate. And you're like, well, I'm going to get this gate. Oh, I'm going to open it. So let me just look for that key. Let me find someone who can actually break through this gate and then go to the other side. And I think that is really developed with coding.
And I'm just following on from what he said. This idea of flow and teaching resilience, that is a personal characteristic that teaching coding really brings out if it's done well. And this idea of flow here is so important to build students' resilience.
Oh my goodness, so much to unpack. I love that. My favorite part is definitely mistakes and failure, because we need to embrace that more across education. And I love that that's like the foundations and the fundamentals of coding and programming, that actually that helps us to build those strategies that we need for learners and educators to become critical problem solvers and creative innovators and designers. Like Gary said, that also made me really happy. So lots to unpack. I want to take a pause for a second. We have a question in the chat from one of our viewers. They'd like to know, what is the difference between the actual terminology? So what is the difference between coding and programming? Who would like to help with that?
It has been answered in the chat, actually. And I think on a practical basis, not that much, but Adam gave us a little bit more in that, really.
I see it now, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Adam said coding is using text to program, and programming can be done with blocks or charts. Perfect. So actually, I wasn't aware that charts could be used. So maybe somebody could help me with that. That's new for me. What does that mean?
Well, and in fact, we're going to see one later when we the resources a bit more. Flowcharts, for example, are an excellent way to help you make decisions. And those kind of charts are very useful. But as I say, I would imagine most educators wouldn't know any difference between coding and programming and will intermix the terms. So I wouldn't get hung up on it. If you're doing a degree in computer science, and Adam has done a degree in computer science, then the difference becomes much more apparent.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Adam, for hopping in on that, and James for clarifying. I love learning new things on this show. I would also be curious to know, we talked a little bit about automation, and you guys talked about problem solving. So is that like any basic problems, or are we talking like big world problems? Are these problems that students actually are going to want to work towards solving? Are they problems that come from the curriculum? Can they be any problem? Is it only standardized based in the curriculum? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does somebody find a problem?
I always like to start my first programming lesson with the students by asking them, how are they going to solve world hunger?
I doubt that.
You know, and actually, as a computer programmer, there are answers there that are very helpful. And computer programming by itself can't solve those problems, but that kind of thought process can. And the thought process is, we want to minimize the amount of water going there. So let me ask you the question: how are you going to solve world hunger? What crops should you plant, and what crops and animals probably should you avoid? Here's a clue.
I love that you're saying that, because I asked that exact same question, but that was as part of the makerspace. So that was a design thinking challenge. And so when you bring those two together, you've got your design thinking challenge where you're going to go for the big questions, the big problems with crazy solutions. And then you bring in coding, which is more realistic and about efficiency and how can we create systems that that automate certain factors, and again that calculate what is the best crop to grow where, and then combine those two. Well, you've got a power team there.
Yeah, and as I just typed the question in the chat that I used to get things started, and suddenly students are like, okay, we can solve this problem. Things like deforestation, we can track it with tools like Google Earth and satellites and all of that computer science that's going on in there. And in emergencies, the Google team actually helps update live footage and things like that. You can track a huge amount. So, computing, it is the world's fastest mathematicians. World War II was won with computers. That is how the UK survived, because they used that information to do it. So if you're saying, can you solve big worldwide problems? Yes. The cure to COVID has code.
So James,
vaccines are actually got a source code.
James, when you first said that, I kind of thought you were kidding, and I was like, because you were like, we're going to solve these huge problems. But now that you explained it, I understand. I was actually thinking the other way, about solving problems. It's about maybe learning how to solve those little problems when you have to like draw something on the computer screen with a line of code, but the grit, the perseverance that you have to go through, learning the menus, learning what everything does, trial and error, learning it all. It's actually that skill of not giving up is transferable, to other things that have become bigger, like solving world problems. So in some ways, like the question at the beginning was like, is it big problems, little problems? Well, maybe it's any kind of problem, but even solving a small problem, it's a transferable, disposition that could be, transferred to any kind of thing, even mathematics. When you're trying to solve a math problem, but at least when we're solving a coding problem, it can be used by other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Has anyone heard of
I think that's the beauty.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
I was just saying that's the beauty, that it's very easy to show code. And the other big advantage of computer science is normally the best code can be sent out very quickly. Every time you get an update to Android or iOS, you are getting the world's best code. It's incredible, isn't it? Rolled out to so many computers and machines and phones. And how quickly do you get the world's best code? 6, 12 months quite often. Never in human history could people do things like that.
And I think this is really, it is true. Like big world problems can be solved. I was just going to say, has anyone heard of the Interceptor and the it's called the Ocean Cleanup Project, and it's a group in the Netherlands, and so half of that group are computer science students who said, we're going to tackle a big world problem, the plastic pollution in the oceans, and said, well, we have to tackle it at the source. And so what they did is they basically did exactly what James is saying. They installed cameras on every bridge possible, and they started measuring how much plastic was flowing through rivers, how much of that plastic was ending up in the oceans. It was all about the data. It was all, they found the 1,000 most polluting rivers, and then they started developing an interceptor, which is a product that is now scooping up the plastic before it actually enters the ocean. And everything is based on data. Computer science, they are just following the numbers. And I think that is what is so, they're now making a difference by cleaning up rivers before plastic can enter the ocean. And then at the same time, they're using another part of their team to clean up the ocean and developing that technology. And again, they're doing the same process. They're using the information they have, coding those programs they need in order to get the information, and they're just following the numbers. And I think that's beautiful. That's amazing what they're doing.
I love that. And I would, you may not have it on hand now, but whenever you have a link to the whole project, I would love to share that. Just as, I'm always sending out inspiration to staff at my school. I'd love to share that. What an inspiring story, especially since we have a lot of scuba diving here in Jordan. Well, maybe not right this second since we're in the middle of a pandemic, but yeah, that's really prominent over here. And so that's also really authentic, right? And very real that they can relate to in the classroom because that exists here. So Sethi dropped the link for us already because he's on it. So I'm going to drop that in the chat for you guys. Thank you, Sethi. That's so cool. Yay. Awesome. Okay. So we also want to welcome Mark to the chat, who's joining from, I'm not sure where, but let us know.
From
And
the
he
Philippines.
Oh, do you know Philippines? Yay. Okay,
Because
great.
he was with us with West because we're part of SEA 14.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. That's so awesome. Nice. Well, welcome. Mark was talking about Lego programming, guys. So I thought we could move the conversation a little bit on how do we get started with programming. So whatever the reason is, either we want to solve a big problem or you're just really curious because you're following all these experts on Twitter and being like, oh, I want to make something cool like that. How do people get started? Either as an educator, maybe we can look at different, or maybe it's the same. How do educators get started if they want to teach themselves, self-learn? And how do educators get started in promoting that with their students across the curriculum? So yeah.
Okay, I did make a diagram earlier, if I'm allowed to share. I don't want to hog this too much, but
you should. That's the whole point. We want to learn from you guys.
Go ahead, James.
Okay, Chrome tab. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, I just made this diagram. I did put it up on Twitter just now, so the link is available.
Yay.
But really, if you want to choose a computer science course, and this is more aimed slightly older kids, if you're using iPads and you don't need Python, if they're like 9 to 12, I would say Swift Playgrounds is a good place. Otherwise, I would use Python. I would use Replit.com or Pythonista if you're on an iPad. If you're not on an iPad, you've got to be honest with yourself. Can you as a teacher code at all? If the answer to that is no, then I would go with code.org. Now, my hesitation with code.org is it's a brilliant platform, but it gets very boring for the kids if it's not used, if it's overused. It's great for the odd cop lesson. It's great when you've got teachers who don't know anything about code. It always provides the answers, but it goes very, very, very slowly. And it doesn't provide that excitement and creativity some of these other platforms can deliver. If they can, yeah.
I wanted to ask Swift Playgrounds, just in case anyone's not familiar, where can they get a hold of that? Is that like a Microsoft,
well, you can type straight
Apple,
in,
or Google?
Well, it's an iPad product, so it's you type Swift Playground, it comes straight up. They give you the course. All the materials are there from Apple. So all of those are iPads.
Awesome.
If your students can't read, I'm going to end it here, but I know Sethi will tell you a lot more about that. But using apps, robots, unplugged activities are the way to go. If they can read and say they're primary below 11 or 12, I would definitely use Scratch. And Google make the CS First course, which provides you with a lot of resources and lesson ideas and how to use it across the curriculum. So that's really powerful. If they're a bit older than that, they need a little bit more sophisticated. If they want to make an app, an Android app or iOS app, Thunkable is really good these days, and it's a step up from Scratch, but it's still quite graphical. If you go above that, and you're talking the more serious, like 14 to 18, CodeHS is really good, and that's in Python and Java. My preference is Python. There are quite a lot of teachers who prefer Java, but CodeHS has a lot of support for that. It's not free, but if you're not a qualified computer science teacher or not got a background in it, then it's probably worth paying the money or at least trying it out and going there. And then if you want to teach the IGCSE and A-level, I have my own site, Python Challenges, which takes you through it all, but it's not as complete a course as CodeHS. They've got a really good team over there, but it's got a lot of resources and will take you through everything you need for the IGCSE and A-levels. If you're not after that kind of thing, then using Turtle or Python Turtle or Python would be my recommendations. So that's the basics.
Wow.
Further down, I knew SETI was around, so he can go
Mic
through that in a bit more
drop.
detail.
Right?
Do you have a mic over
Right?
there? You can drop?
Comprehensive.
Pardon?
So that's
I got-
basically
Yeah.
programming, decision making.
Yeah, I was
I am
And that's
so
a wrap.
happy
Thank
to
you,
have
everyone,
her.
for coming. That was it.
Show over.
Oh,
I love
dear.
that. So James said he tweeted it out, guys. I also just want to call out because I've also used this before once. It's draw.io, James. Tell us about that.
Okay, Draw.io was what I used to actually draw the flowchart. And it's a nice little add-on. It works with Office 365 and Drive and just about anything. Draw.io is completely free. Okay, through the tools, the only one you would have to pay for the professional edition is CodeHS, and you would have to pay for the Pythonista app. Replit.com is free, but there are paid for functions. Just about everything else is completely free.
So
Yay!
Draw.io looks just like Lucidchart. I mean, are they connected, or is it just ridiculously similar?
Completely separate. Lucidchart,
Wow.
you do pay for. The reason I use Draw.io is because I can literally drag. I'm terrible at drawing, so I just drag from one thing to another and connect it. It's very easy, and that's how I let the kids
It's super
make their
easy.
flowcharts.
Cool. Yeah.
I love that. So, James, all the programs you mentioned there are awesome. So, and I like the yes or no. So that's perfect. So teachers can make their way around. If you are a teacher teaching English, for example, or you're teaching art, or you're teaching music, where would somebody like that who is not in the maths or sciences, etc., where or why would they want to start coding? How could they bring that into their curriculum?
Okay. Well, each one is different. Music is code, actually. It is a different type of code. You're making sound, you're creating notation and things like that. So I think Scratch is really powerful because it has all the musical functions built right in there. There are some other tools which can really help you and enable you to code, but also they're a great way to help you with music, to bring the logical connection into music. And you'd be surprised how many coders are also musicians, because the skill set seems to be kind of similar in some ways. So yeah, Scratch is really good because it's actually good with computation, but also the notation and creating that music and lo-fi is really powerful. In terms of art, we've been using mathematical art for years, all sorts of patterns and graphics and things. And Turtle is brilliant for that because you can create these amazing little artworks with relatively simple formulae. And that's really powerful as well. As for English, it's great if you can have multi-stories where they go in different directions. Pick-a-path stories are great. And there's something called Twine. Now, Twine itself is complete children-friendly. It's used a lot for adult fiction. So please do not just allow kids to search the internet and read the Twines. It was even used for a Black Mirror episode, actually, to create the script for the interactive Black Mirror episode on Netflix. So that's cool.
It's also non-linear, isn't it? And that's what I like about that. But yeah, I do agree with that. Don't let them loose.
Hey, it's a good question though about language arts teachers, art teachers, other than like a computer science classes. I've heard that before too. And there's a lot of lessons out there you can find. I love CodeHS. They've got a couple of options out there for science classes and math classes. But I always think about what is the purpose of the learning that they're happening in their class already? That's like around a book they're reading or a science topic. What kind of app could they develop with whatever platform they're using at their school? Maybe a transdisciplinary project within the science class, or maybe these days we try to give kids choice, and we're always saying you can make a video, you could do a presentation, you could do this, and maybe coding an app is one of those options. So you might have a couple of kids in your class that they're passionate about coding, so they want to maybe demonstrate their learning through code, and maybe not every kid's going to do it, but you can have that option out there and maybe work with the computer science teachers on what the kids are learning those days. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I love that, creating an app to solve whatever the learning task is or the objective. That's brilliant, Wes. And I know Gary wants to share about dancing too, so we'll pass it
Yeah.
to Gary.
For
Dancing, we love
example,
dancing.
how is coding related to dancing? For physical education, of course, you teach steps, right? Step number one, you do this. Step number two, you do this. And then you repeat. So you are dancing. Basically, you're teaching sequence and then loops when you dance. So let's say you have three steps, and then you count 4 times, and then that's it. That's looping, basically. So you can integrate actually coding to any subject. So dancing is basically programming. Just like waking up in the morning, what's the first thing that you need to do? You brush your teeth, and then you have routines. So basically,
Well, how do you brush your
That's
teeth?
why I'm such a good
One
dancer.
of the steps. There's different steps even within that.
yes.
So
So it has variation, but the result, you have a clean teeth, right? So there you
Shannon's
go.
really connecting with your dancing analogy, Gary. So thank you for sharing that. But I really like that too. It's kind of like, not that I'm an expert in the maths at all by any means, but like when I remember my learning, it's like always the order of operations, like read the problem, understand it, what method do you want to use to solve it, make an equation, etc. And then brushing the teeth, super simple, right? Or packing your lunch to go to school. And so putting a set of operations in sequence to achieve something. And that kind of leads nicely to automation too, because what we're trying to do, well, at least what I see around me in the world, is that we're trying to make things more efficient, productive, and safe for the community, right? For communities globally. And so automation is really starting to support humans in their endeavor to do things a lot better. And I know there's like always that big question is automation going to take over? What are we going to do about jobs, etc.? But I wanted to hear from you guys. What do you think about how coding will help automation? So when we're talking about machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, I just finished a course on that with ISTE, so I'm pretty excited about that. But I'd love to hear from you guys, since you're experts with programming, how that all ties in. So if somebody wants to work with bots and work with solutions that support that transformation, how does coding fit into that? And how early do they have to start if they want to think about getting into a field like that?
I think there's an incredible potential for this to impact the world in a very positive way. I think a lot of people are incredibly scared of automation, whereas I'm excited, because I think not only is it going to make things more efficient and safer, it's like what you were saying, we're always trying to strive for that. It's also going to free up people to explore their own creativity. And I think a lot of people are worried in the sense of, but we're going to lose our jobs and we're going to lose this. But we're moving towards that creator economy. And that move is scary. A lot of people are afraid of that because, yes, jobs will go lost and people will stop. However, if we reimagine how the economy is sort of how it works, that will eventually sort of funnel back. And, there are ways to solve that. And again, computer science will probably solve those issues as well, because they'll figure out a way how to automate stuff, generate wealth, and redistribute that. It will eventually get solved. So I am incredibly excited about automation. And also, I think there's a lot of sort of messages being sent out that scare people. So for example, if you're talking about making things safer, if one fully automated self-driving car has an accident, everybody talks about it. However, when thousands of drivers crash into trees, nobody talks about it. I would choose the one person over 1,000 dying every single time. I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but that is also part of automation.
It's the psychology. Like the safest way to travel is by plane. But
really,
when you are driving the car,
Absolutely.
when you are driving the car, you are much happier to take that risk because it's in your own hands, and that's the problem that automated cars have.
Well, and also automated cars are unfamiliar. The unfamiliar is automatically perceived as more dangerous. The dangers that we've learned to ignore, that we've acclimatized to, those aren't dangers at all. Those are facts of life. We don't even have to pay attention.
Well, it's the whole story of sitting in a hot bathtub that sort of slowly gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And if you jump in, then obviously you're going to burn yourself. But if you sit in it and then slowly raise the temperature, you're fine until it's too late.
Right. I wonder if
So-
it's like the kids that like when they're learning at this at a young age, then when a car is automated, they actually know how the automation works and how the code works, and they might feel more comfortable with it because they understand it.
And it's no longer
So it's really
unfamiliar territory, and then they feel better with that. And then on the other side of that, it brings us to this: it frees us people. It frees you up to do creative things. So you can try and solve problems in a creative way. Try something different. And I think that is another benefit of that automation. I look at some of the, things that have just been announced recently, like when you look at what Google is doing with the language and with Lambda, and it is mind-blowing what they are able to do. Now, they're not there yet, but what they can achieve now with automation, artificial intelligence, and it is incredible.
I was just thinking that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Does it, are there potential risks? Yes. And that's why we need to have that open discussion with everyone, start very early on, so that our very young learners know that this is a thing and that we can discuss this. So by the time they get older, we have all those things in place. Like what Wes was saying, it's not something strange or, alien. They know what it is. It's the same with iPads. When you show a 90-year-old person an iPad for the very first time, or you show a 5-year-old, that 5-year-old is going to pick it up. It's going to move. It's going to look at it. It's technology. They're used to it. They see it everywhere. Can you imagine how people were in, if you were to travel back to the year 600, and you showed them electricity? My goodness, they would probably kill you right there. So I think it is important to start very early on.
And I want to talk about that a little bit, actually. 2 more questions before we bring it to a close. We're getting close now. But I do want to talk about how do we start early and this idea of bots. So we talked a little bit about automation, coding is really important. And so how do we start to teach them with actually tangible things? I have seen some amazing pictures from both Gary and Sethi of amazing things they're doing with their own children in their home with coding and bots. So Mark was also talking about Lego. Where can people start with that? Like if you're a parent watching in on this show, for example, and you could also be an educator and you would like to introduce your kids to coding, how could we use things like that to help them get started?
Personally, I would say the younger you are, we're now really making the shift from coding to talking about computational thinking and the principles behind that. Because when they're very young, it's more about how you approach things and how you look at problems. And so, for example, a early years class, and there were 3 and 4-year-olds. You leave the classroom, time to go for lunch. Okay, well, what are some of the things we need to do? Well, we have to put on our shoes. What's the first thing you do? You look at the shoe. What kind of a shoe is it? Is it a shoe with Velcro? Is it a shoe with laces? Is it a shoe without any of that? Is it a Croc? Is it what type of shoe is it? And depending on the type of shoe, you're going to have a different step-by-step plan. Because if it's a shoe with Velcro, you're going to have to open that shoe, place your foot inside, make sure that the tongue is up, and then close the shoe. If it's a shoe with laces, you're going to have to do another check. Are the laces tied or not? If they're tied, you need to untie them first, then lift up the tongue, place your foot inside, put the tongue down, and retie them. So I think it's what we did. We had a session with our early years teachers, and we were trying to sort of just get them to understand that everything they're doing, we're not going to change anything about what you do. You're already doing it. When you're with Legos, you're building things, you are following step-by-step instructions in the classroom, you're cooking, the best place to start, the kitchen. You're doing all the things you should be doing. The only thing we're going to add is that you use the correct language in terms of you're going to introduce certain words into their vocabulary. You're going to ask certain questions that you may not have asked. And that is going to bring that computational thinking into their lesson. So for example, instead of just saying, I wonder what you're going to do first, you're going to actually ask them, oh, there's quite a lot to be done here. How many steps do you think we need? Okay, that's the first step. They're now thinking about, oh, there's multiple steps. How many? Okay, then you start introducing words like, oof, maybe we can come up with an algorithm for that. And then they, oh, what's that big word? It's like, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
They can say that word, they can say algorithm. If they can say, it's all the same. Just introduce the vocabulary. When they make mistakes, brilliant. Oh, I wonder what went wrong. Oh, I see now. You put your foot in and you forgot to lift the tongue up. Brilliant. Right. Next time we've got to remember to do that first. And it's all those things that our teachers are already doing, but it's looking at it differently. It's looking at it through a different sort of lens. Hope that makes sense.
I'm so glad you said that, because you said that it's what people are already doing. And I'm hoping that anybody who's watching the show will really take that on and say, right, I don't have to start something like completely from scratch. It's more aligning and more relating what we are already doing in education with things that are going to help them solve bigger problems in the world. So I really like the way you positioned that. The shoe thing was like incredible for me. I never thought about tying shoes in that much detail, Sethi. So thanks for walking me through that. We have about 10 minutes left in the show, and I was just checking the chat to see if there were more questions. People were also talking a little bit about frustration working through coding, but I just wanted to say, and thanks for everybody who shared on that, as has already been said on the show, I do think it's important that we work through frustration. I think sometimes in education, we can be focused as educators, leaders on trying to get the best out of everybody. And of course we are. But what we have to accept is that getting the best out of our learners and the best out of our team is giving them that space to fail, which was also talked about on the show. And with that failure comes frustration. And with that frustration comes working through those emotions and those strategies to work through problems. So I think it's all part of the bigger puzzle. And I really love that. I'd love if we could talk a little bit about resources and where people can go to get started. So, for example, if we wanted to start over the summer in preparing, build up our own skills. Bonnie mentioned in the chat that she's already started with C++. I'm super impressed. So maybe we pull Bonnie on in the fall to teach us about her learning. Where else would you say would be some great places? Are there like coding camps that you guys have heard of that people could send their children to over the summer? Educators could participate in any of those as well. Have you heard of any, guys?
I think if you're talking about educators and teachers wanting to understand more about computer science, I would suggest looking into CS50. CS50 is it's online. It's a free course. It's on edX. I'll see if I can find the link. But okay. It's basically an introduction to computer science, and it's developed by Harvard University. It's online. It's free. You walk through everything, and it introduces some of the very basic principles, but that is aimed at older students. You don't need to have any background in coding whatsoever. Just an interest. Dive in, have a look at it, see if it's something for you. But that's really aimed at older.
Yeah, I think CS50 is highly demanding. So in the chat, I've just put 3 resources, and these are aimed at adults. Think like a computer scientist. But the one I would say that is good, so long as you've got a bit of business nous, is Programming for Everybody, and that's a Coursera course.
Yes.
And then Invent with Python, a good set of books. And that's quite good because it's got automating books, so it's quite practical. I don't quite like the way that Osweigar goes about things in terms of his programming, but I think it's a very good thing. So those are the 3 resources I would suggest for teachers. They're a little less demanding than the CS50 course. There is also, as a second step, there's an MIT Introduction to Python, and that's on edX. That is also an excellent course, but again, highly demanding.
Can I ask you? Cause you mentioned 2 things that I haven't done yet, and my go-to is CodeHS these days, and so I'm kind of curious what y'all think about comparison of what CodeHS offers, even though if it's for 14 to 16-year-olds. I mean, I feel like I learn off it really easily.
Mm.
It's got a learning flow
I mean, that's the
to
thing.
it.
If
So
it's
anyway,
aimed at the students, it's probably just as good for the teachers, right? So yeah, I mean, Code HS was one of my top resources because they have done a really nice job on developing the flow there. You know, so
I also thought I'd go ahead, Sethi.
No, I was back to the very young ones. I would look into Hello Ruby. It's beautiful. It is so well done. The books are amazing, and also the way that it ties in with the video shared on their website. It's really well done. It's aimed at younger children, but my kids absolutely love it.
And I would say the event with Python's, I was going to say the event with Python, I think is okay for 12 and upwards. They've also got, there's one with Minecraft, which is also excellent in their range, coding with Minecraft. So, you know, that kind of hits that range nicely. But there's literally thousands and millions of resources out there. If it's for students like 12 to 15 to do on their own, Code Combat is also good, but that's a paid for subscription.
I played that. That was fun.
They have quite a few free levels, so you can check it out and see if it's for you.
You get about 1 hour of content really with Code Combat for free.
In my case, I am asking my youngest kid to go to Ben Collins. He's learning spreadsheets, and after that, I'll be asking him to go and study app scripting. So, well, spreadsheets are good as a basic way of introducing coding. Because later on, I'll ask them, okay, how much did you spend for the week? So I'll just ask them to design a spreadsheet that will compute distance.
I mean, I would say actually GScript is not a great beginner language because you need to know JavaScript first.
Isn't it basically
with Gary as your parent, that's fine. Yeah, it is.
Google Sheets. Google Sheets. Just Google Sheets.
Gary, you could have your own business teaching coding globally like this. I'm telling you.
Well, I think that we have a play school here in the Philippines. I am teaching them Scratch, and then so for kids, this is 7 to 9 years old, right? So I'm introducing them to coding using Scratch.
I mean, Scratch is perfect for that. And if you've got a good teacher, it makes such a difference because students can then genuinely be creative. The CS First is good, but a lot of it is monkey do, monkey see, follow along. But it gets you a good start. But the teacher
it's a brilliant place to start.
Yeah.
I have to say, because like for myself, without the background that many of you have, it was a great place for me to start. And I think that a lot of students that I've seen, at least at the schools that I've been supporting here in the Middle East the last decade or so, sometimes it can be scary if you haven't had that opportunity to, play with that from a very young age. It can be very daunting. And so it's been really helpful for them. The other thing I wanted to add to the pile just before we close off with our last rapid fire was don't be afraid, guys. If you're an educator watching this show or a leader and you are interested in diving into this, don't be afraid to co-construct and co-learn with your students. I have learned more from my students teaching me than the other way around.
Totally.
So for example, as you all know, I teach a couple hours every week, and one of my classes, Year 12 Creative Media, they're doing this, they had choice learning, and some of them picked video game design, and they designed their assets in Adobe Illustrator, and some of them have taken assets from Unity, and they're building these race car games in the Unity platform. And Unity has a space where they can add their own code, or they can start with a piece of code and elaborate it as the car goes around the track. But what I really felt was really helpful was to let them explore and discover and play. And then when we join in the Google Meet, they're teaching me. I asked them, show me how you coded this and where does this fit? And so, learning together with your students also builds those strong relationships. So I just wanted to say that if you're an educator like me who is still fairly new to coding and programming, take that risk, be brave. It's really fun, and you get to celebrate your students, and they love teaching you. They love teaching their teachers. So I don't know if you've experienced that, but I thought that was really.
Absolutely. I mean, in the makerspace, I've learned so much about microbits and Arduinos just from the students.
Yeah.
It is, you know, you put it in their hands, and then all they need is just to be shown the direction. Like, have a look over there and see if you can figure it out. And I mean, the younger ones they've made some amazing things with MakeCode and microbits, and then the older ones have just, my goodness, some of the stuff they're doing with those Arduinos, it's mind blowing.
And
I love
would
that.
say, I think if your summer project or something and you give kids space, there is frustration. Ideally, you want to give kids the tools to deal with that frustration first, but then tools like Unity 14+, the incentive to make a game is really powerful. And Unity have a lot of great video tutorials. If you go on YouTube, there's some amazing video tutorials. You just have to search them up. But yeah, you know, they're very powerful. Another tool, if you're into art and 3D art, is Blender. But again, really big, powerful tools.
Blender is, oh my goodness. There is this one. There's a channel. I forgot his name. Basically there's this kid who started his YouTube channel when he was 12 by following a Blender tutorial of a donut. And I think anyone who's looked into Blender has seen the donut. And then he's just given himself the challenge of learning a little bit of Blender for 20 minutes every day. He's now 14 and he is creating incredible renditions in Blender. He's 14. He has, give me one, I'll see if I can find it. It is mind-blowing what he's doing.
Yeah, I love what you said there while you're searching for that about bite-sized, right? We talked about professional learning. Some of us attended like sessions where we're just, you know, sharing for 2-3 minutes, and it's about building that consistent routine and that consistent practice, right? It's like illustration. I'm also learning to draw right now. And the more that I practice a little bit every day, the better I get at it. I find that when I take a week or two off, that's where my skills start to drop. And I love what you said there, Seti, was that the kid just practice for 20 minutes a day. That's manageable, right? 20 minutes a day, right? Wake up in the morning after breakfast or before bed, 20 minutes of coding, and look what we can achieve with that. So I love that.
William was his name, and I've just shared the screen just to give you an example. Now, I'm not going to play the video, but if you look at, for example, if I just, these are some of the renders that he's basically making after 2 years of just daily practice. So when you look at this, it is just absolutely incredible. Whoa. And that's the journey of a 12-year-old kid. So basically it all started with just a basic donut, the render of a donut. And he's just documented his journey over the last 2 years. And he's gone all the way up to just amazingly realistic renditions. And how do you do that? Well, it's just little steps, baby steps, just every project 1% better, and that's it.
I love that. So guys, if you're listening in the chat on YouTube or on demand, if you're interested in starting like a coding adventure and building your skills this summer, be sure to tag us. We'd love to see what you guys are creating, and we'd love to also then to celebrate that when we come back next year. We have reached time, and I want to just do a quick rapid fire since it is the last episode for a couple of months. Everybody needs to take some well-being break and be with their families, and it couldn't be more important than this year for sure. So we're going to just do a quick rapid fire. Feel free to shout out a special memory that you had in Thursday PD this year, or something that you're really proud of in EdTech, or any kind of celebration. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat as well to celebrate. So who would like to kick us off?
Well, we are preparing our kids to be able to, we're preparing kids in the unknown future. So coding is something that they have to learn and will be useful, especially in the coming future, right? So it's a life skill. Coding is a life skill.
Life skill, guys. Lifelong learning from Gary. I love that. Go ahead, Eric.
So yeah, I feel like for me, learning it's hard to do just on my own. it really helps to have company. It helps to have, even if they're at the same level as me. And I feel really lucky that I've got like a learning buddy going through a JavaScript course with me. We both have some programming experience, but then we can both kind of like see, how did you solve this? How did you solve that? And kind of work together while we go through the course. And that means I do it versus not doing it. So I'm pretty happy about that.
It's the power of
Buddy
a
system
PLN.
is great. Yeah. All right, James, are you ready?
Yeah, I just want to say I've been so happy with how positively everybody's taken the reading power tools and how everybody's helped me along the way. Adam's helped me with the coding, Eric's helped me, Seti's helped me, and everybody else has helped me. It's been great, and to get that training to that level now, where I feel, it's really getting out there to teachers, and they're actually helping kids, and also just my own students, who were the ones who had the student voice and power to tell me what was going wrong in some of their other lessons, and I was able to gently suggest this is a way to help things.
I love that. And guys, I've dropped James's website in the chat for you guys, so please do check that out. James is literally changing the world with this lovely tool that he has created by himself and supported, like he said, on Thursday PD. So please check it out.
And how did I do that by chance? Coding.
So if you want to create change in education and create tools, this is the whole point, right? Is that James created something to help educators and students by coding. So you just need to
I don't
keep
think
looking
if
at
I'd
those.
have just said, hey, I've got some professional development, I don't think I would have got to 1,000 teachers the way I did. No chance. Please simplify your language. I don't think that message would have got out without that tool to help.
Congratulations, James. It's absolutely brilliant. Yes, round of applause for that. Okay, Sethi.
I think if there's one thing that and I'm sure all our viewers and anyone watching this will agree, is if there's one thing we've seen this year, it's how incredibly important it is to be adaptable and to be willing to change. I think many teachers have been put in a position now where they have evaluated their own practices, and it's made them think about being more adaptable and being more flexible. But it's also, I think, highlighted just how incredibly hard teachers work. And I am so impressed with all the content that has been shared online, the support teachers have given each other, the way that everyone has just come together and they're growing their PLNs and they're there for each other. And it's beautiful to see that, because often teachers were saying to their students, this is what you should be doing, but they weren't really doing it themselves. And I think what we've seen in the last year is sort of that shift. And we're seeing a lot of teachers willing to try new things and actively going out. Everyone's exhausted right now. They're all tired. So everyone's going to take a break, have a nice summer. But yeah, I think that's the one thing, is just, I'm incredibly impressed. If you would have asked me before this entire thing kicked off, how is it going to be? I would not have predicted it to go as well as it did, in terms of how quickly everyone has just picked up new tools and new things, and how they've all come together and helped each other. And I am blown away.
The resilience is amazing, right? Everybody did great. Educators, leaders, support staff, parents at home supporting their kids with online remote learning. Big shout out to all of you guys. We definitely appreciate you. Wes, I'm going to leave you for last, because I just feel, as one of the founders, you should definitely be the last one to speak. So I'm going to share next and leave you last, okay? So I want to shout out my share, and then I'm going to hand it off to the founder. My share for this year is the power of questions. And I think think that if we want to see creativity turn into innovation and change the world, I think that comes from the power of questioning everything around us, questioning the status quo. I think questions also empower each other with our relationships. They can help build, they can help just question where we're going in life. So it may not necessarily be related to coding, but I think for myself in my role, the power of questions has really shifted my mindset and how we can continue just asking about change in general. So the different kinds of questions we can ask and the power of them. Thing I'm grateful for is this Thursday PD crew. I really don't know how I would have got through the year without these guys. So thank you to everybody who's on the live stream right now. Also, thank you to everybody who's in the chat, everybody who's not on the live stream, but part of Thursday PD who couldn't be here today. I appreciate all of you, and I'm sure that's around the table, especially for our viewers as well. The amount of compassion, passion, dedication, commitment that all of you guys show when we have a question, it's just answered within minutes. It's incredible, this team, and I'm so grateful to be part of it. So Wes, if you started this years ago, then thank you to you and thank you to everybody, and I'm going to pass the floor to you now.
Oh, thanks. You know, I think you just building off of that. It's lifelong learning. It's taking risks, and look at this show now, Thursday PD. What? This is awesome. You know, we years ago we were just like, let's meet up on Thursday and have a chat, and we just talk to each other because we enjoy talking about technology and learning and teaching, and it's been fun. And look at it now as we all learn and grow, and it's so great to see all of your faces. And you know, I've seen some people in the chat, and I'll be doing more of these in the future too. And yeah, rock on, go Thursday PD.
Yay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, would anybody like to say anything else before we sign off? We're good. James is waving already.
I just want to say I'm amazed. We've gone 10 minutes over and James hasn't said anything.
Yeah.
I know.
Say it, James.
No, but it's the last episode, so I think, you know, it's a bit heart-wrenching for him too, so I hope anyway. But with that said, we will bring this to a close, guys, and say farewell. We want to thank you for an epic year. We went from weekly shows, we're down to the first Thursday of every month now, and I think this is probably going to be manageable going into next year. I see some nods on the show. So we wishing everybody a very restful, relaxing, peaceful, enjoyable summer holiday over the next 2-3 months. And we will be seeing you guys on the first Thursday of September, pending holidays, because I think, yeah, first or second. So stay tuned for the announcements coming. But thank you to all of our viewers for sharing and learning with us. And we can't wait for another epic year ahead. So with that, stay safe. Keep creating, and we'll see you guys in September.
Bye.
Bye.